Hi friends, welcome to my channel. My name's Fiddle. We're on to episode number 2 of making Madeleine's house in miniature. Today I'll be showing you how to make wallpaper and wood paneling out of poster board. I also have a digital download of the wallpaper that I made. You can find it at the link labeled Scavenger Hunt in the description box below. That is also where you'll find the blueprint for the first floor of this house. We're going to start out by drawing the stairs on a piece of poster board, but don't worry about cutting it out right now. Next, measure out 26 half-inch strips. We should only need 24, but 2 extra for just in case. And again, don't worry about cutting them out just yet. I started measuring them out by hand with my ruler, and then I realized that my metal bar was half an inch thick, so I used it instead. Now we'll need to do the same thing with a big piece of poster board, but your lines can be thicker than half an inch. They're just a guide to help us with our wood grain. Now using a pointy pair of scissors, a small ball stylus, or a wire brush, scratch lines in your cardboard going one direction. It really helps to get some good waves in there. And you'll want to do this to a couple of pieces of poster board because you'll need more wood than you actually think. Repeat the process on the other pieces of poster board that we have already cut out, and it doesn't hurt to have extra for trim around the room, doors, and windows. It may not look like you're doing much right now, but after we get paint on it, these marks will really stand out. Now that we've got it all marked up, we can move on to painting. I didn't have any brown or wood colored paint, so I made up my own with white paint and lots of food coloring. And this was just a temporary fix. I did end up going back over it once I got some brown paint, so that way everything looked cohesive. Once the brown paint was completely dry, go back over it with a watered down black wash. This is where it brings out the grain texture for the wood. When everything's had a chance to dry, we can measure out our strips again. Or if you're lucky enough for you to still be able to see your lines, then you can just cut them out. For the flooring, make sure that your strips are all the same width. That'll cause problems later on if they're not. I put all different lengths and widths, and it was a puzzle to put it together. And that was something that I knew but forgot. And it's okay, because in the end, you really can't tell that they're all that different or that I have gaps. The one thing that I do have a problem with is that the corners of some of the strips came up, and that'll just take some sanding and repainting, and that can fix that, so that's not that big of a deal. But there is the fact that this house is kind of not perfect, so the imperfections really just add to it. I went with size variations between 1/2 inch to 1 inch thick for all of them, but I would say the 3/4 of an inch would be good for the floor. And don't forget to leave about half of a piece of poster board for windows and door trim, and make sure that you're going with the grain. I did realize that a paper cutter would be a good investment. I'll have to get one eventually. But the next step is to cut out all your strips. Once you've got them all cut out, set them aside for now. We're going to move on to making the wallpaper. You'll need a piece of poster board and your choice of yellow paint. Again, I didn't have any, so I used this pigment that was in my resin kit. But I like how it came out. One thing to keep in mind while doing this is whether you're using the shiny side or the dull side of your poster board. You'll have to use the same side all throughout the project. I used cotton balls to lay down my color, but of course this isn't really paint. But if you are using paint, I would suggest something other than a paintbrush, like a sponge. Even yellow spray paint would probably be an even better idea. Set it aside to dry, and now we're going to make the stencil. Some of you may already have this stencil as it comes from Dollar Tree, but unfortunately anytime I'm there, they never have it. Some time ago, I went to their website and seen that they had a picture of the stencil online, downloaded it, and turned it into what I needed it to be. Then I printed out several different sizes and decided on which one was the best. I'm not suggesting that you do this, but this was how I had done it. If you get the chance, go to the store and actually buy the stencil, or you can follow the link in the description and that'll take you to a free printable of it. But anyway, to make my stencil, I cut out the one flower pattern piece that I needed and put clear tape over both front and back. Once I had it covered with tape, I went through and cut out all the white spaces, or as close as I could get it. I ended up having to make 3 of them. And this is what it looks like after I'd got it all cut out. And now on to stamping. To keep everything lined up and where it's supposed to be, I went with my ruler and measured out every other inch, every other line, until I made it all the way across my paper before I even started stamping. Example, for the first row, I put a spot on 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. On the next row over would be 2, 4, 6, 8, and I alternated back and forth to give me a diamond pattern. I also used a red marker, which is the color of the flowers on the wall, so that way it would blend in and you wouldn't be able to see them. Once I had all the spots marked, I used a sponge and more of that pigment stuff, except this time it was red, and started stamping. I did mess this up though, because there's supposed to be 2 red lines through each one, and I only have 1. Thankfully for the downloaded wallpaper, it has both the lines. Give it plenty of time to dry before moving on to the next step. Okay, just a few things left to do before we can put our wallpaper on. In the movie, it looks like the wallpaper is more of the wall than what the wood is, so I would say 2/3 wallpaper, 1/3 wood paneling. But for mine, it's actually almost the complete opposite, where I have more wood paneling than wallpaper. Decide on how wide you want yours to be and then trim it down to fit. Now as for what side of the wall to wallpaper, I have all of them on your pattern sheet the way they're supposed to be covered except for these 2 right here. Flip them over and wallpaper the other side. The square windows are supposed to be on the right and the round are supposed to be on the left, and the bay window is supposed to be on the right instead of the left. I used tacky glue and laid down the wallpaper first. I used a combination of glue and brown paint so that way if there was any gaps you wouldn't be able to tell. Then I started laying my strips of wood down. I tried to make sure not to get 2 the same length right next to each other. Okay, now we're ready to glue the wood grain to the stairs. At this point, I hadn't painted mine yet, but this is where the numbers come in handy so you can keep track of each step and on which side to glue the wood grain to. Okay, for the next part, we're going to use our 1/2-inch strips and glue them to the front of our stair. They are the wood grain pattern and the riser for the stairs. Because it's an inaccessible part of the house, I figured there's no point to worry about using the corrugated plastic behind the riser. And the last thing we're going to do in this tutorial is the flooring itself. As I said before, I didn't have the appropriate paint, so mine was quite varied. And in the book it says it looks as if it was made from one piece of pine, so I needed a more cohesive color. After finally getting some variations of brown paint, I mixed them up with glue and painted the whole floor. And with that, it brings us to the end of our tutorial. In the next one, we'll be doing the trim around the windows and doors, along with putting the walls together. If you've made it this far, thank you for being here, and if you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, as it really helps me out a lot, and I'll see you next time.